Welcome back to the garden here in the Norfolk Broads cottage. We're now in the first week of August 2020 and we've come over to have a look around the garden and see what's doing well and what's finished now, because we're going into what's really traditionally regarded as late summer, early autumn, and a lot of the early colour plants have now done their thing and have been cut back. So we're going to have a look at some of the plants in this garden which are still doing a good show. First thing that's drawn our eye is this Queen of Denmark rose. Queen of Denmark or Queen of Sweden? I'm going to have to check on that, but I think it might be Queen of Sweden actually. But we did a feature on this when it was having its first flush. It's been deadheaded but hasn't been cut back at all, and you can see this is a really good floribunda repeat flowering rose. Plenty of bud coming back on this and a good display of colour still from this rose, which we get now right the way through until we've had quite a few frosts. All we need to do is keep deadheading that to keep the buds coming on it. The geranium bedding along the front of the cottage is really doing very nicely. It only gets watered about every week to fortnight, and it's still flowering nicely with the feed that it's getting. Two vimers are getting a bit restless. They can hear the activity on the river, which is just up that bank. It's a Saturday afternoon and the river traffic's really quite heavy. So he's not a happy boy being disturbed, are you, Tobesy? This little rose in the main shrubbery is doing very nicely. It's a repeat flower. It just grows to about 3-4 foot. Gives these clusters of quite open, not really a double, full single. Lovely open for the insects. Nice orange in the centre as it does open. Buds are very pretty as well, and that will go on flowering for about another month, I guess. Down the little cut towards the vegetable garden we've got this lovely hydrangea, which every year gives us these beautiful clusters of, these aren't actually the flowers are the tiny things in there, but the colours all on those racks, and this is really doing nicely, growing to about 5 to 6 feet in semi-shade, which is where the old Vimes decided to take himself in the heat of the afternoon. This little herbaceous geranium is quite late in this position. It's just tucked in here on the corner of the cottage and is in quite dense shade for most of the day because we've got a big plum tree just behind it and the hedge on the northern aspect, so it doesn't get the early morning sun. It just gets a little bit at this time of day, mid-afternoon, and that's flowering a good couple of weeks later than the ones that are in full sun. Buddleias are still flowering nicely. This one we cut back very hard each year because we've got the rose just tucked in on the side behind it there. But the butterflies are still, even in this stiff breeze, managing to hang on. Don't quite know how they're managing that because it's taking a good breeze along the front of the cottage. I'm being followed around the garden by these pair. You'll get up in a minute if I walk round this corner. Playing it very cool, Toby. One of the star performers on the northern edge of the cottage is this Japanese anemone, growing to around 6 feet tall. It's a beautiful, deep, rich pink colour and is just at its best at the moment. A little bit of deadheading to be done on this to keep it flowering, but the insects are really enjoying that one. And if we just pull back and show you the full plant, right the way down to the base there, quite a dry aspect. We do water and feed this, but that's just spectacular, particularly from the inside looking out through the kitchen window onto those pink flowers. It's like having a window box. These Achilleas on the front border are again in full flower at the moment and forming lovely platforms of nectar rich flowers for the insects to enjoy. Having to support this in this border because it's extremely dry. I've got, as you can see, a wire support around the base just to hold these upright, otherwise they'd be on the floor in this very dry, parched border, which gets full sun for most of the day. And still in full bloom just almost coming to the end of its first flush now, the lavenders. A little bit of brown coming just on the tips of those flowers, but this lavender border just again awash with bumblebees, honeybees and all other type of nectar seeking insects. Just love this for the 4 to 6 weeks that this border is flowering, and the scent as you brush against this, just spectacular. And what we've got down at the base is a whole crop in this gravel of tiny little lavender seedlings, self-seedlings, that every year come up through this. We find it quite difficult to get them out of the gravel in one piece and transplant them and grow them on, but we get half a dozen lavender plants from this hedge every year.